Hell's Point, Part 17, Fog and Empty Thoughts. This is just the way things have to be, I guess, I thought to myself as I scanned the surrounding area. It was like, no matter where I went or what I did, trouble always seemed to find me. It made for an interesting life, but interesting isn't always good. I was 32, and the chances of me ever having a normal life sort of disappeared the day my father died. "Be a man, Bobby," he said to me as he lay there dying in his hospital bed. "That's all you can do. That's all any of us can do." 15 minutes later, he was dead. His heart just gave out. He looked so small lying there, tubes and needles cutting into him to keep him alive long enough to dictate his last will and testament to me and my mother. When he was finally gone, I laughed. I still laugh about it sometimes. Couldn't tell you why. There's just something that strikes me as funny about death. How you work your whole life to be somebody, and one day it's gone. What a joke, I scoffed as I walked down through the town. I couldn't rightly say why this place brought up thoughts of the past. Maybe I felt like Hell's Point itself had somehow come from my own mind. Like a thought made real. Maybe that's why there's so much damn fog, I thought to myself. It was difficult to tell what time of day it was in this place. Almost if someone had thrown a blanket over the sky and just left it there. I could only make out vague shapes, but the town for the most part seemed to be deserted. The cliffs looked down over the town like an evil face staring into a clouded pit, probably full of man-eating bears and other unpleasant things. "If you go into the woods today," I mumbled under my breath. I was definitely in the woods now. I was indeed out of the way, but that didn't take away this feeling that I was stepping into something worse. To my left, I saw what might be a hotel or a hospital. As I got closer, I saw the Red Cross over an emergency exit. Might be a good idea to check in and have a look at these cuts, I thought to myself, not to mention the arm that might be broken. It had started to itch quite badly. Approaching the doors, they slid apart with a metallic hiss. As I expected, the hospital at first glance seemed to be completely deserted. Drawing my gun, I walked slowly through the entranceway into the poorly lit waiting room. It was the diner all over again, empty and dead. The paint peeled off the walls in every direction. There was a map on the wall. It showed the layout of the hospital, 3 floors. The operating rooms were on the 3rd floor. That was probably where I would find medical supplies. I sighed. Of course they're on the 3rd floor. The halls were littered with rusty gurneys and paperwork. Healthy living and anti-smoking posters pasted the walls. "It's not worth the buzz. Don't do drugs," one exclaimed in large block letters. I did my fair share of drugs in high school, when I managed to make it to school. I had a lot of regrets about those years. Could have handled them a lot better than I did. The fog seemed to have made its way into the hospital somehow. It almost had a life-like quality about it. You almost had to move it out of the way with your hands to see past it. After about 15 minutes of skulking around dark hallways, I found the door to the stairwell. It was locked, but I was able to kick it open. That's when I heard the dogs. At first, it was a growl. Then it sounded like the hallways were full of them, but I couldn't see them coming. I tried to slam the door shut, but I must have broken the lock when I kicked it in. "Shit, shit, shit," I yelled. There were too many to shoot them all. I could see about 15, and I didn't have that many bullets. Letting go of the door, I bolted up the stairs. I didn't have time to make it to the 3rd floor. Screaming as I ran, I kicked the door on the 2nd floor open and busted in. I could feel the ramming and clawing against it as I pushed my full weight against the door. Hooking a desk with my foot, I pulled it towards myself and started to make the switch. Laying my gun on the floor, with half my weight attempting to hold back 15 angry dogs, I moved as fast as I could, swinging the desk around with all the force that I could muster. I got it into place with a loud bang, but it wouldn't be enough, and the dogs were still coming. From the other side of the room, I heard a groan. It was a kid, must have still been in his 20s. He looked like shit, battered and bruised all over. He was bleeding from multiple cuts on his face and neck, and his brown hair was matted with blood and dirt. His green shirt was muddy and torn. I screamed across at him as loud as I could. "Hey, wake up! Fuck, wake up! You wanna die? Come on and help me!" He looked up at me, his eyes clearing. "What?" he said, still groggy. "We're gonna get eaten by dogs if you don't fucking move," I snapped. "Come and fucking help me." His eyes finally snapped open as he dragged himself to his feet and slowly limped towards me. "Hurry!" I screamed. I was pissed. We were about to die and this asshole couldn't move his feet any faster. The kid grabbed another desk and started trying to pull it towards me, but collapsed before he could make it all the way. "This is bad," I said under my breath. "I'll get the table," I shouted to him over the dogs. "Just come over here and take my place." He looked over at me and nodded. "Okay," he said as he began to crawl towards me. As he came to rest beside me, propping himself up and pushing against the desk, I bolted for the other. I thought about leaving him there, but the dogs might be everywhere, and if all else failed, I could let the dogs eat him, which might give me time to get away. "Always look out for number one," I thought to myself as I dragged the desk over and pulled it over top of the first. Through the window I could see dogs still snapping and barking. They weren't going to give up just yet, but the desks would do for now. They wouldn't be able to get through them. I walked over to the window and looked out into the parking lot. More empty cars. Looking closer, I saw a boy. He might have been 10 years old. He looked right up at me and walked away. He was the only other person I had seen here so far besides the kid here in front of me. I silently wondered why in the hell any of this was happening to me. But then, since this thing started, it had been one thing after another. I turned around to face the door. The barking had finally stopped. But now we were trapped in an abandoned hospital filled with dogs and no way out. At this point I had given up on trying to reach the third floor. We were stuck here. There was no way we would be going up. I looked down at the kid and he looked up at me with fear in his eyes, then down at the gun on the floor. "Don't," I said quietly. "It's not worth getting killed over. I'm a police officer," I lied. "I just want to get out of here the same as you do." He seemed to relax a little at that, as I quickly scooped the gun up and holstered it. Too close, I thought to myself, figuring he probably wouldn't have made the same choice had he known who I really was. I grunted as I sat down in front of him. "What's your name?" I asked the kid. He looked back at me, silently, almost as if telling me his name was the most difficult thing in the world. After a few moments he answered, "Jack. My name is Jack Schrader." It suddenly dawned on me that this could be the one that girl was looking for. "Are you from the train?" I asked him. His eyes went wide and he nodded. A look of fear and sadness spread across his face. "My wife," he said, choking back tears. "She was there. I have to find her." "Relax," I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "She's alive. She'll be all right. We just have to find her," I said in as comforting a tone as I could manage. He nodded again. "How'd you get here, Jack?" I asked him. I didn't want to let him know I'd been there just yet. He might not trust me after that, and he might have some information about what was happening here, though from the looks of it, he was probably just as out of the loop as I was. Jack shrugged. "I don't know. All I remember is waking up on the ground bleeding by a burning train. I got up and called for my wife, then I heard her. I tried to get to her, but someone grabbed me from behind. Then I woke up here." I nodded. He was just as lost in this as I was, maybe more so. "Well, the first thing we need to do is get some sleep," I said. "I've been going all night, and you look like shit." Jack shook his head. "I've got to get out of here and go back to the train and find my wife if she's alive." "Listen," I said, trying to take control of the situation. "I was there. The bodies were everywhere, burning and screaming. Your wife was alive, and I pulled her away from the wreckage." I could see that I had his attention and continued. I pointed to my arm. "That's how I did this. I was going to another police detachment for a meeting, and the next thing I know, the train's on fire." Jack was none the wiser, and I had his trust now. I didn't want to have to kill this kid. He didn't deserve it. I wouldn't have to just as long as he didn't figure out who I was. Jack motioned for me to continue. She was calling for you. And suddenly they were on us. Jack swallowed hard and looked me in the eye. Who was on you? He asked, obviously concerned about his wife. She climbed on top of the train car and he was there beside her. Another one came at me with an axe. Both were in black with masks. I killed one, but the other one took your wife. Jack put his head in his hands. What am I gonna do? I have to find my wife. But the dogs, man. What do I do? He trailed off and sat silent for a while. I put my hand on his shoulder again. Don't worry, I'll help you find her, I said in a reassuring tone. He looked up at me. Really? He asked with hope in his eyes. It's my job, kid. I'm a police officer after all. Jack smiled. Thanks, officer. He trailed off again. Then, in spite of the situation, I began to laugh a little. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Jones, I said confidently. My name is Jones. Thank you, Mr. Jones, Jack said, still laughing a bit. Don't worry about it. Now get some sleep. You're no good to me in your state. We can think of a plan to find your wife and get out of here as soon as we both get some shut-eye. Jack looked like he might disagree with me, but nodded instead. He must have known I was right, and laid down where he was. He was asleep before his head hit the floor. I had to think. I'd gone in way over my head coming to this town. There was no way I was helping this kid find his wife. I'd only just gotten here, and that was already too long for my taste. My best bet would be to find a car that worked and steal it, and then get as far away from here as possible. But first thing was first, I had to get the hell out of this hospital.